Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Hello, everyone. I'm Keri Glassman, your host of Living a Nutritious Life. This week for the podcast, I sat down with Brian Murphy, the visionary CEO and co-founder of Living Prana, a functional food company transforming unhealthy packaged foods with nutrient-dense superfoods. Brian and I met at a conference where I sampled Living Prana pancakes. I loved them, and Brian, lucky for me, was sitting right there giving out samples himself. So we started a conversation about the company, and I loved the pancakes even more. Brian is a former investment banker who transformed his health by losing 65 pounds after struggling as a stress eater most of his life. You can read more details about Brian in the show notes. In this episode, we dove into the health benefits of adaptogens like lion's mane and rhodiola, and Brian shared how Living Prana meticulously crafts their products to ensure effective doses of adaptogens while also ensuring impeccable taste. What I loved most about this conversation, though, was that it touches on the struggles of building a business and Brian's personal health journey. So let's dive in. And as always, please rate, review, and share if you love the podcast. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Hello, Brian. So good to have you here.
Good morning.
I am so excited to chat with you today. So I just told everyone in a little intro about you that we met at the biohacking conference, and I tried your pancakes and I was immediately obsessed, loved them so much, was fascinated. So as you know, I don't need to tell you, we had a great conversation and it was so fun meeting you. And so I'm really excited to have you here today for our listeners to learn about your story, to learn about this incredible company you're building, and to learn, really where this passion comes from, because you really have a really cool, unique story. So let's start with, you were an investment banker and now you have a pancake company. How does that happen? How do you go from being an investment banker to flipping pancakes?
It's funny. Most people who know me in this chapter of my life have had a very hard time imagining me in a suit and tie, in a boardroom.
I do. I'm going to put myself into that bucket of people. I cannot imagine it.
Yeah.
Or I can imagine it just because it's not a crazy, unheard of story to get burnt out and then change directions completely, but I do have a tough time seeing you in that role.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That says a lot about me, at least I think.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. So I spent a lot of my career coming out and even growing up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. Mm-hmm. A lot of the focus was around professional career success, drive, motivation, basically run through the wall to grab the last dollar. And that was the calling card of success in your life, was how much money can you make? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people around me in the families, their parents worked on Wall Street, and they were traders, they were investors. And that's all that I grew up around. And so it was almost ingrained at an early age of, for you to really be deemed a success in this world is like go out and make a lot of money. And so
Mm-hmm.
this finance, the world of finance was really what was around me at the time. And what I found as I was growing up is that numbers had come really, really easily to me. So like
Mm-hmm.
analyzing numbers, understanding numbers. And so I used that and found some interest in seeing how numbers drive the way that businesses work. And that's what really
Mm-hmm.
walked me down this path of accounting and finance. I got my chartered financial analyst designation after college, and that's what really pushed me into the world of investment banking. And what was fascinating to me at the time was me helping companies grow to expand their mission and what they're set out to do. And I worked a
Mm-hmm.
lot with founder and entrepreneur, like family owned businesses. This was not the big mega cap public company mergers and acquisitions. I was taking that type of investment activity and doing it more, call it at a local level.
Mm-hmm.
With companies
I
that were
love that.
looking to grow and companies were looking to expand and bring on a capital partner to help them do that. So, that lasted for a good part of 15 years in some version of consulting, investment banking. I was the head of acquisitions and strategy for a subsidiary of United Healthcare, was my
Mm-hmm.
last role in corporate. And going into that, so I spent a lot of time in healthcare. And what was fascinating to me was, again, I'm helping people improve their lives. And I
Mm-hmm.
happened to have working in surgery. And so I was helping surgeons, open surgery centers, partnering with hospitals. And, what really came to me as I worked more and more in the business was that there's a specific place for surgery, and
Mm-hmm.
that my desire to improve people's well-being, and mine included, really felt disconnected from the micro lens of just surgery, which is very episodic in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So over time, while I was very successful in my career and very early from where I was in the roles that I took on, it became really clear that my impact was calling me to place efforts really more along the front end of people's well-being. And so I had a couple of moments. This really started in 2019, where I went to my first retreat. It was down in Tulum, and it was yoga. It was
Of
breath work.
course it was. Of
Of
course
course,
it was.
so it was yoga, breath work, meditation, all of the things. I did my first sweat lodge, and it
Mm-hmm.
was actually in that experience that night where I came face to face with the realization that I effectively was living an incongruent life. And
Mm-hmm.
I had banker Brian that was crushing it. And then I had my soul and the real Brian who was on a path that was going substantially, call it 180 degrees in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't unsee that, in that I had two really different forces pulling at bay. And really what lived at the end of the day was, I'm going to put myself in a position to help people live their healthiest, happiest lives possible. And that required me to make a significant shift.
Before we go down that path, which I want to hear, I want to actually go back a step. You were still doing investment banking and you were helping surgeons with their businesses, but what prompted you to go on that first retreat?
Hmm. So this was part of a transformation that was going on. So a little before this, I had lost 65 pounds
Wow.
back in 2016. And so for me, I was actually a stress eater a lot of my life.
Okay.
And so I used food as an outlet. It was a
Mm-hmm.
comfort for me. I had a very unhealthy relationship with food a lot of my life. And so fast forward to 2014, 2015, 2016, where I'm more and more successful, taking on more and more responsibility, and had more stress. I had challenging working relationships. I got engaged for everybody in my life but myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately, in the beginning of 2016, there was this radical transformation for me where I called off the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I took ownership in my life where I had ballooned up to about 225 pounds. And I worked with a trainer a little bit. But the big thing that catalyzed it was elimination of dairy,
Mm-hmm.
refined carbs, and refined sugars. And that was about the first 30 or 35 pounds that started. And then the remainder of it was shifting how I was working with this trainer that helped me over my first plateau.
Okay. So when you went to Tulum though, and you had that experience where you saw the two different Brians, you'd really been in this transformation for a while at that point.
Yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
it, it woke up really with the weight loss, and for
Okay.
me taking ownership with my life and seeing the change in my own health from where I was for so long in my life, in my adult life and childhood, to
Mhm.
now how I felt so much better, so much healthier, so much happier
Mhm.
after my weight loss and after taking ownership in my well-being. And I
Right.
also realized that so many people struggle from similar things,
Yeah.
whether it's stress eating or not really understanding or valuing what you put into your body really dictates so much of your life besides just your physical appearance and health.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, couldn't agree more there. Okay. So you get home from Tulum. What happens next? Quit your job?
Nearly. So I knew after that night that I couldn't continue walking in the path that I had been walking for so long. And this
Mhm.
was me challenging everything I'd known as a professional in
Mhm.
everything since post college and everything where I was cutting my teeth and making a name for myself in the world. And it required me to really release the entire thing. So I got back and I realized this is actually the time for me to take a bet on myself.
Mhm.
And I had listened to a podcast by Moise Ali. It was an interview. He's the founder of Native.
Mhm.
And so Native, the deodorant company, he built that in his parents' dining room table practically, and then sold it to Procter and Gamble a couple of years later for 9 figures. But his whole thing was standing in Dwayne Reed buying deodorant and looking at the back of the deodorant stick, realizing he couldn't pronounce nearly any of the ingredients on the deodorant, and horrified that that's what people are putting on their bodies into their
Yeah.
bodies every single day. So he's like, I got to do something to make this different. And that was the light bulb for me of I am going to help people consume
Mhm.
things differently. And that's the way that I'm going to help them live their longest, healthiest, happiest lives.
I love it. Okay, so take us to where you are now with Living Prana and what you're doing there, because I think the company is so interesting with its mission and not only the mission, but the products themselves. Like I said, I fell in love with them right away, not just the ingredient label, but how they also taste. So the combination of those two things we know is very important because you can have a beautiful ingredient label and you can have all the right ingredients and it can be so perfectly healthy, but if it doesn't taste good, most people are not going to consume it. So, as you know, being the founder of this company, people have to enjoy it, they have to like it. And that was I think your brand, again, one of the reasons I fell in love with it was because I said, wow, this tastes amazing. It's super easy to use, which is also important. We need things to be convenient for people, but it also has this beautiful ingredient list, which I won't give that away. I'll let you talk about that. But how did you decide to start with pancakes? How did you decide the name Living Prana? Like where did this all come from?
Yeah, for sure. So I wish that I could sit here and take credit for the origin of the products. It was actually so my co-founder Ryan Seaman. He came up with the original recipes a little over 7 years ago at Burning Man, and talk about ultimate innovation, where you're in a place, body is nutritionally depleted, and you
Yeah.
knew you needed a smoothie but didn't have a blender. Had a pancake mix and said, "What happened if I put my smoothie ingredients into this pancake? Is it
Mm-hmm.
still going to work?" It ended up becoming the anthem of everybody he was there with. And so he realized that, oh, like the spirulina and the maca, the ashwagandha, these supplements that are really great for reviving the energy and vibrancy and vitality in the body
Yeah.
were really working even after you cooked them in a pancake. And so he had the innovation, the lightning struck in the bottle out there. He and I met actually a little over 3 years ago. And I realized that this is more than just a pancake. And this was the connection of helping people reimagine their relationship with food. And
Brian, I'm going to just interject for a second, and I'm just loving the whole. You're really playing into the whole vibe of the company here. That we have the moment in Tulum, the moment in Burning Man. I mean, this is really playing into the whole vibe here, and
yeah, we
and
love
I'm loving it.
it.
I'm loving that. I'm saying that in a very complimentary, loving way. It's just
Thank you.
it's just I love it. It's
And
just it's
so
the vibe of the company through and through.
yeah, and that's really important of what we infuse in the essence
Right.
of what we've created carries forth through our products every single day.
Absolutely.
And the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we conduct our business, the values of which we built the company upon, it all is congruent. And that's really, and thank you for seeing that. So Ryan and I came together
Yeah.
and we realized that we want this to be a really a pancake for the masses, and
Mm-hmm.
that we want people to eat and enjoy their favorite nostalgic breakfast, but not have
Mm-hmm.
all the bloating and the guilt and everything that destroys your health that comes along with eating pancakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went on this mission of how do we make this approachable for everybody so it can be consumed every day. And
Mm-hmm.
Ryan and I had an experience, first time in my life. I ate pancakes 5 days in a row with our original recipe. And I was so sick. I was bloated at both of us.
Yeah.
And we looked at each other in that moment and we said, there's an issue here with something in the recipe, in the formulation. It was actually modeled off another pancake mix that's commercially available. And so we went down this whole deep dive of, oh, this is the refined flours and the refined grains
Mm-hmm.
that are in this. And so we ditched all the flours
Mm-hmm.
and we started testing all the gluten-free, healthier for you options. When we found buckwheat, it struck on
I
every
love
single
buckwheat.
chord. Buckwheat, it's a complete protein, which
I
is
love it.
rare for something that's plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
It's high in manganese, other minerals and vitamins. It's high in fiber, and it actually tastes good.
And
It
it's gluten-free.
and it's gluten-free, gluten-free, grain-free,
I
even
think
though
because many people don't know that because they hear buckwheat and they don't realize that. So
one of the worst branding experiences ever was whoever named buckwheat buckwheat.
exactly,
uh,
exactly.
because yeah, it's not wheat. It's not glutinous, and it is not even a grain. Even though a lot of food companies will claim it as a whole grain, it's actually a derivative of rhubarb. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's fully plant based, it's grain free, it's super easy to digest. One of the things I've loved too is how many people with IBS and celiac and digestive issues that now are saying, wow, I can eat a carb and not break out in hives or have ratcheting stomach pains, feeling knives and in my gut. And
Mm-hmm.
so feeling these people that are bringing the happiness back in their lives because of what we've created is really, really special.
I love
So
it.
yeah,
So,
Ryan.
so buckwheat is the foundation of the
Mhm.
product.
Yep.
But then I also know that you made it a functional food. You added some of these superfoods to it and adaptogens. Like, how did you decide what adaptogens are we going to add, and why did you want to add adaptogens, and like where did that part of the story come from?
Yeah, the superfoods, the adaptogens, the mushrooms have been a huge part of both Ryan and I's healing journeys and our health journey. Ryan had a really, really bad bout with toxic mold years ago
Mm-hmm.
and used superfoods really to heal and rebalance his gut and restore his health,
Mm-hmm.
using a lot of those superfoods. And then same thing with me in my weight journey in bringing these into my life to feel more energized, more sustained while I was consuming more efficiently
Mm-hmm.
and feeling the health, feeling the immunity. And so Ryan and I, as we sat down, we designed our products so we have a Prana Cakes and a Brain Cakes. Prana Cakes is the one that was created at Burning Man originally, and that is all around vitality, bringing your
Mm-hmm.
natural energy back, having you feel like you're living your life at its fullest. And so we designed that around, and things like maca are very complementary with that. Same thing with spirulina being the most nutrient dense substance on our planet. Those things were really important. We found Sacha Inchi, which for me is one of my favorites now. It is one of the most densest sources of plant based protein
Mm-hmm.
available. It comes down from South America and incredibly sustainable. It requires very little water and it
Mm-hmm.
grows year round. So we found these ingredients that can bring protein, that can enhance and support things like energy, vitality, brain cakes for memory and focus. We use mushrooms, lion's mane,
I love
cordyceps.
lion's mane. Yeah.
Lion's mane has been so for me the last couple of years. Mushrooms are an everyday thing for me as a teaser here, but it's been a huge part of my health, and I'm a big fan of the fungi kingdom and the benefits that we get from using functional mushrooms, in our lives on a daily basis. And then adaptogens like rhodiola, which is one
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite too. I mean, things of where it helps relax the body and the mind so that you can receive information more clearly. And then also helps with focus and with memory, like cognition and retention as well.
Yeah, and so for everyone listening, if you don't know what we're talking about when we mentioned adaptogens, an adaptogen really can be anything that helps the body naturally adapt to stress.
Mhm.
So usually some form of a plant food that will help, a compound that will, again, help the body
Yeah.
naturally adapt.
There's three characteristics that make an adaptogen. And yes, it can be an herb or a different type of food, but there are three things. One is it's non-toxic,
Yeah.
meaning it can be consumed at quantities and not cause toxicity. Second is it's non-specific. So it's not like
Right.
you taking vitamin D when you have a vitamin D deficiency. It builds adaptive energy for the body's responses to strengthen overall long term. And then it's normalizing, which means it brings the body back into balance. So
Mm-hmm.
you're, let's say, low energy, it will bring you back to the center. And if you're too high, it will also bring you down to the center. So it's focused around normalizing and balancing the state internally.
Right. So one thing that I remember when I first tried the pancakes that I loved was that when you use the mushrooms in it, you are using actually a certain amount that you can actually reap benefits. Where I think there are so many products out there that might even have a beautiful ingredient label with all the right ingredients, but they're not in any quantity that's actually going to do anything for you. So sure, that's great that they've added cordyceps, but there really isn't anything in there. You may as well take the real a supplement if you want it, or have the regular pancakes. But for in the case of Living Prana, I remember you shared that with me, the quantities and how you've taken great care to make sure that you're getting the highest quality ingredients, but also putting it in quantities that someone can actually reap the benefits. So tell us a little bit about the process of not just choosing those ingredients and how you've done that, but also from a business perspective, how you were able to accomplish that, because that can also be a really big challenge. You can have the best intentions, but getting something to actually come to fruition when you're building a product is very difficult, can be very difficult.
100%. It was one of our biggest challenges coming out of the gate. And for Ryan and me, something that was non-compromisable was ingredient quality
Mm-hmm.
and functional benefits. And so what we're saying to the world is actually going to show up in the product experience. And yes, we realize, and there are a lot of companies out there that dabble with an adaptogen or a mushroom or an herb, and they use it for marketing purposes. They're not required to disclose the actual amount of the dose.
Right.
And so nobody knows. And it's one of the things that really grinds my gears when it comes to food packaging and beverage packaging,
Mm-hmm.
because the consumer doesn't know. They just read, oh, this has lion's mane and it must be good for me.
Absolutely.
And so what Ryan and I did was we looked at the research studies that were publicly available. And so we said, what is the recommended daily dose or recommended daily value to feel the benefits based on studies available? And then let's get no less of the midpoint there, but if not higher. So where we landed is anywhere between 50% and 90% of the recommended daily intake of any of the superfoods, mushrooms, or adaptogens that are in our products. There's a gram of each mushroom per serving, where a lot of companies will use a quarter of a gram per serving.
So you're saying they're recommended because there aren't going to be guidelines. There aren't government guidelines for the amount of mushrooms you're supposed to get in a day. So you're talking about guidelines from specific studies.
Correct.
Did you know that there is one phase of sleep that most people fail to get enough of? And this one phase of sleep is responsible for most of your body's daily rejuvenation, repair, energy, and controlling hunger, and even the hormones that affect our weight, and so much more. I'm talking about the deep sleep phase. And you probably know by now that sleep deep is a pillar of a nutritious life. So there you have it. It's for good reason. You probably also know that I'm a little sleep obsessed, not with sleeping a lot per se, rather with getting good quality sleep, because I've been a not so great sleeper most of my life. And when I sleep well, I feel like I can conquer the world. And when I don't, well, not so much. So why don't most people get enough of this one most important phase of sleep? A big reason is magnesium deficiency. Over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and magnesium increases GABA, a neurotransmitter which encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is critical for sleep. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response system. Those with magnesium deficiency usually have higher stress levels, which negatively impact sleep as well. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. I used to just take magnesium at night, but now I take it at night for relaxation and sleep, and in the morning for brain function and stress management. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind and help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. The deep sleep benefits are really noticeable. I track my sleep. You may see me post this on Instagram, and I can tell you I see and feel the difference. For an exclusive offer, go to buyoptimizers.com/NLKeri and use promo code NLKeri for 10% off any order. I'll also put that in the show notes.
And so mushrooms, for example, the what's generally spoken about is 2 grams of a mushroom per day to really get the benefits of it. And so we went to a gram because if we went to 2 grams, we would have a big challenge with taste without loading it with sugar. And those are the levers to push and pull as you're in formulation.
Yeah.
And so we landed with a gram. That was where that is a place that gets you to feel the benefits of what these herbs and the mushrooms are doing, and then also allows us to maintain a product profile and taste that is desirable. We
Right.
had our first version of the prana cakes. I can say this now because we've modified the recipe. The spirulina was 3 times higher in our first version of the prana cakes that came out in 2021. And as you alluded to earlier before, there were a lot of people that could not bear the taste.
Right.
And that
Right.
was that as founders who are so proud of what you put into the world, it was a moment of really opening up to feedback
Yeah.
and realizing, okay, even though we're getting all this protein and all this benefit from the spirulina, people don't want the spirulina aftertaste.
Right.
And
And there's a balance to strike there,
Mhm.
because there really is, because people have to enjoy it. And that's also part of it. You don't want people to be, even if someone was going to buy it, first of all, they're not going to buy it if they don't like it, right? For the most part. But even that person that is super committed to their health and like, I'm going to get this spirulina in every morning like this, you don't want them to be forcing it down. You're selling a pancake. It's part of the nostalgic experience of just enjoying, and we should enjoy our food, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want it to be, you wouldn't want a product like that people are forcing down, right? You want to, people have to enjoy their pancakes.
Absolutely. And we found a beautiful solution. I referenced Sacha Inchi before. So
Yeah.
when Ryan and I are in this conversation that we need to significantly reduce the spirulina. And we were facing with, well, that's going to slash our protein profile, which is one of the things that we loved and people really, really loved about the product. And so in this exploration with the formulation, we started looking, well, how can we backfill and try to support the same amount of protein? And we tested a few different things. And when we found Sacha Inchi, so Sacha Inchi being so nutrient dense and having such a high content of protein, and it has a bit of a nutty taste to it. And so it actually was a flavor improvement and backfilled the protein that we would have lost from reducing the spirulina. It
Did
was
you look, yeah, did you look at things like pea protein, and did you try things like that, brown rice protein?
Yes. So we, in staying like fully grain free and
Right.
staying really, really clean, we decided, like with respect to like a brown rice protein,
Just
that we
curious.
didn't want to introduce into it. And then the pea protein, we didn't look because Ryan and a few people that we know actually have a difficult time digesting it.
Okay.
And so a lot of these
Yeah, I
proteins,
was just curious. It's not, I don't have a preference. I was just,
yeah, there were things that we thought about like hemp
Mm-hmm.
or almond powder.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that was a big win is that we actually have the products fully nut free.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who have a nut allergen,
Which is great,
yeah. So
especially for kids, because pancakes are obviously such a food that kids love. So,
Mhm.
so good. Okay, so what's coming next?
So we have a couple of exciting things on the horizon. As much as we love these mixes and they're making their way into the kitchens and the homes, on the dining room tables, of everybody around the country, we're seeing there's a convenience segment that we haven't really tapped into. So those people
Mm-hmm.
either that don't cook at home
Mm-hmm.
or want something a little easier, even though it's just add water. want something a little easier, grab and go. And so Ryan and I are really excited about coming into this year. We're testing a shelf-stable cooked waffle. And
Wow.
something that you'll be able to take off the shelf that will be preservative-free, at least artificial preservative.
So good.
And it'll be organic certified, clean ingredients, same experience, but then you can have it as a snack, whether like people would reach for a brownie or a cookie. Now you can reach for a waffle square.
Oh, I love that with a little bit of nut butter on top. That sounds really
So
really
trying
good.
to meet people more where they're at in their lives, right? Where can we, as a food company, be more ingrained in somebody's natural evolution of their day, right? Instead of I have to stop and bring this in, where do we go in the flow of where they would want to consume food? And sometimes, a lot of times it's on the go, whether it's for parents, kids, or adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. Just because we were talking about the ingredients that you added, just going back to that for a moment, what are the ingredients that you see in products on grocery store shelves that you dislike the most? Now, I mean, I'm not talking about product ingredients that you would ever consider. I'm saying like, what are the things that bother you the most that you see? Because obviously you're trying to make a change here. You're trying to, get products onto grocery store shelves that are 100 times better than what we see there now. But what are the things that you see that you think are the worst? I mean, there's some obviously, but I'm just curious what you consider to be the worst.
We could have a whole podcast just on this.
I know we could, but I'm just curious.
And I will say also, I have a lot of friends in the food and beverage space. And so this is not a knock on anybody's product whatsoever. But as I'll put my consumer lens on right now, not as a brand owner. As a consumer, I've made decisions to, let's say, minimize or remove oats from my diet. Oats are one of the most heavily sprayed crops with glyphosate, right? And glyphosate, as for people who are listening, you probably have heard the word, but it has been one of the biggest harmful things that have been driving inflammation and disease and toxicity. Since its introduction in the late 1970s, early 1980s, it's a herbicide, and it actually destroys the lining of the gut and kills and imbalances the mitochondria as well. And so oats are a big thing for me.
You can get, just so everyone knows, you can get organic oats without glyphosate.
This is true. Yes. And I have my own perspective about that, but I do. So I minimize oats in my day.
No, I just want people to know though, that they can find.
Yes. Yeah. By definition, organic certified products are not using glyphosate or herbicides in that way. Further from there, the game around sweeteners is always something to look at. And so a lot of products will advertise no added sugar or, things of that nature. And then it's loaded with stevia or monk fruit or erythritol. Now, like monk fruit's natural, yes, but any of these modified, heavily concentrated sugar alcohols or sweetener alternatives are also not great for the gut. They're not great for the health. They spike your blood sugar. And so I try to minimize those as well. We made the decision to use organic coconut sugar in our products because it's the least invasive and inflammatory on your blood sugar levels. And we use a moderate amount of that. So the sugar.
Right. I was going to say your products are not sweet at all.
Yeah. And for us, that was one of 3 flavor levers. We use cacao, we use Ceylon cinnamon, and we use the coconut sugar. Those are the 3 dominant profiles from a taste perspective. So that's a big one. Fillers, gums, those are things that I avoid. I mean, where I start to see things that are going to be emulsifiers or additives, I walk the other way. I mean, those things are also sticking to your gut lining, and it disrupts the balance internally as well. So I'm focusing in areas where there are shorter ingredient lists, organic certified, and really driving towards things that have its nutrient density. Another thing, a lot of these flour alternatives, I guess, since we're speaking on the pancake side, things like cassava is very common. And cassava, my personal perspective, cassava is an empty carbohydrate, and it doesn't provide a lot of nutritional value. Yes, it's gluten-free, which is
I was going to say it can be a good replacement swap for people.
Absolutely. It's gluten-free and it checks that box.
Yeah.
And I live in a world of yes and. So can you get
Yes.
the gluten-free and then add some nutrient density on top of it? So cassava is way better for those who are gluten intolerant. And then for me, it's like the shift from things like a cassava into a buckwheat, or something that would have more nutrients coming along with it also being gluten-free.
Yeah, I love buckwheat. And that was also, again, one of the things. Well, first, when I met you and you were sampling the pancakes, it was first that I just tried one and I loved it. Then I looked at the ingredient list. I was just trying it blindly. I said, "You're at the biohacking conference. I'm just going to give this a try." And I was hungry. So I just tried it. But then I looked at the ingredient list. And the thing I was most impressed with at first was the buckwheat, just going back to that, because I've been a big fan of buckwheat. I mean, I talk a lot about buckwheat actually in the book I wrote in 2010 was all about antioxidants, and it's a really anti-inflammatory diet. And we talk a lot about buckwheat because it is one of the foods with the highest amount of antioxidants. It has a high ORAC scale. So I love it. I've been talking about it for a long time. And again, with all that fiber and being gluten-free. So I love that. And then then I looked at the mushrooms and I said, "Ooh, we've got lion's mane." And then you told me how much. You roped me right into that product right at the beginning. But then just learning more about what you're doing at the company and the mission and how true you are to that. It's just really amazing seeing you grow this. I'm loving watching it, and I love hearing your story. And as we can all tell, listeners, you can probably tell that Brian really does live this living prana life. You really are, doing all the things. Are you still going into sweat lodges and meditating?
Absolutely. I mean, it stays a regular part of my life. Now, like a contrast, hot, cold, and sauna, sweat in general is a huge part of my daily routine. The sweat lodges are more episodic when I can go out to a Sedona or find some place that's actually, I prefer to be in an experience that's supported and held by indigenous lineage who have carried prayer along with the sweat lodge experience. And so there's a spiritual element to the sweat. And I think that's why it was so profound for me in Tulum back in 2019, because it wasn't just sweating. It was there. It was the prayers. It was the intention. It was the lineage that was infusing as I was detoxing all of the things in my body. That was really, really potent and powerful.
Amazing. Okay, last question for you. How do you live your most nutritious life? What ignites your nutritious life on a daily basis? Aside from having your pancakes for breakfast every day.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I'm eating Waffles probably 5 days a week, which is amazing thing to be able to say to people. They look at me and they're like, "You're eating Waffles 5 days a week?"
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. And my co-founder, Ryan, eats them 7 days a week. And he's one and looks like he's 30 and could be in a bodybuilding contest. And so that's a big part of it. But also yoga is a massive part of my regimen. It's for movement.
Big part of my life too.
Staying limber is for the body, but also balancing the mind.
I love it.
Whenever I'm carrying any kind of story in my head, or I'm stuck in a loop, or something's happening, I'm carrying some heaviness, I take it to yoga and I look at it literally as a prayer and I offer it to the sweat. And that experience is so cleansing and purifying for me.
Okay, when you are in New York, you need to come to a very special yoga class that I go to at 10:45 a.m. as many days a week as I can.
Okay.
I don't get to do it every day, but when I can, you need to come to yoga with Julie with me, and you will love it.
I'm in.
You need the Julie experience.
Yeah, I'm coming to New Jersey and New York for Thanksgiving, so we're gonna set a date.
All right, we're gonna try to make that work.
Yeah. So yeah, yoga's a great piece, and the mushrooms. I mean, it's in multiple times a day for me. Any different way that I can bring it in. I cook with lion's mane periodically.
I love eating lion's mane fresh.
Yeah. And so having those be a regular where I'm getting multiple grams of the mushrooms in my life a day, and contrast hot, cold. For me, I cold plunge a lot and I sauna, cold plunge for 5-6 minutes at a time, and then getting in the sauna for 20 to 30 minutes at a time as well.
5-6 minutes. Impressive. Look at you showing off there. 5 to 6 minutes in a cold plunge. Okay. This was amazing. I'm so happy for everything you're doing and growing. And yeah, I'm just really, really happy for you. It
Thank you.
looks like it's going great. And I cannot wait to try the waffles when they come out. And I'm going to be following, seeing what you're up to at Living Prana. So
Amazing.
everyone, you can also go to the show notes to learn more about Brian and Living Prana and where you can get your hands on some of these amazing products. So thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.